Greetings, antique radio enthusiasts. Welcome to another edition of Antique Radio Archaeology. Today's going to be a very interesting day. I have got what we call, or what should be called, a Chelsea Model 122 regenerative receiver. Now, when I found this online, I could see from the pictures that there were some serious issues, and I brought that to the attention of the guy who sold it to me, and he adjusted the price accordingly. Basically, what we've got here is not a Chelsea 122 radio at all. The only thing that makes it a 122 is the case and the front panel, and there's the variable coupler coils. Now, if you look inside, you can see this is not a Chelsea variable capacitor. These are not Chelsea transformers. This is not a Chelsea plate. So, with that being said, what this basically is a home-built radio. The reason why I got this is because I do have a Chelsea 122 radio. Now, this is an actual 122. He did replace one transformer with the wrong type of transformer, which I'm going to correct. But what I'm going to do is I need that plate to be on this radio. But the plot thickens. This plate here is a lot thicker. Therefore, this case was modified to accommodate this plate. Therefore, what I need to do is transfer everything over to another case. And I have 3 cases here, but all of them have problems. This one here has a big crack that runs all the way across. You can see it on the sides. That's not too bad. But, like I said, this was modified to accommodate the thicker faceplate. This case here has got holes drilled into it because they, for some reason, decided to add some extra lugs here. The same problem with this case. This case has some extra holes drilled into the back of it. So that's an issue. So somehow I'm going to have to take these 3 radios and I want to create a 122. Now, the purpose of today's video is not to create the 122. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything out of here. I'm going to move it into this case here, and I'm going to create a home built that has a similar panel to a 122. But that and the case are going to be the only thing that are 122 related. Everything inside is going to be totally non-Chelsea. What I will in effect be doing is rebuilding the home built, in this case with a blank panel. That is what I'll do today, and then with the rest of the parts we will have another video where I will rebuild the 122. The first thing we're going to have to do is tear these things apart and get started. My next step is to go ahead and pull all the home built parts out of this case. Facilitate things. I'm going to remove this. Okay. I need to take lots of pictures. I'm going to mark all these wires as they are wired, just to make life easier. This one here is A minus. That is going to be B plus plus. Okay. Here. Input to the coil, output to here. Okay, so put my antenna in, then hit my coil. The output's going to hit this capacitor. Okay. So I already know that's what that is. What I'm going to do is I'm replacing this apparatus right here, because this is in bad shape, I'm going to put a different varial coupler in here, a better one, so that we can get this thing working. The inside, outside of the tickler coil. So, there's my radio right there, all of it. That will be for the 122. All right. So that's it. I'm going to put this in here, wire it all up, and we will have us a home-built radio. Alright, so the final verdict is in. I traced out the wiring on this thing, and what I've discovered is this was wired almost identical to a Chelsea 122 radio. Now the big difference is that the phone jacks were not wired in there, and the A plus, B minus, and the A minus were, for some reason they switched those, and that's not good. But I think the reason why it was switched was because somebody was troubleshooting it and they just wired it wrong when they put the wires back. But this is the schematic for the 122, and this is how it will be wired when I'm finished. Now the only difference is all the parts here are not Chelsea parts. None of them are, with the exception of the case itself and actually this little knob here. But other than that, everything else is non-Chelsea. What I did to replace the couple of Chelsea parts that were existing, I had a ZR4 that had the same situation happen to it, where somebody had gone in and modified it to get it to work, and they replaced Chelsea parts in it. Well, it turns out the parts they replaced in that were some of the parts that I needed in order to create this home belt, or recreate this home belt. So here's a picture of the ZR4 that I pulled the parts out of, and as you can see, they definitely are not 122 or ZR4 parts. And because of that, I think they're going to go well with this home built version because they're actually been tried and tested in a 122/ZR4. One of them is this variocoupler, and I got this little coil here, and I've got some different knobs. I have this rheostat where I replaced, or I pulled out the Chelsea rheostat from this. And other than that, what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to pull the tube sockets and the transformer off of this plate here. I really don't like this plate. It's just, it looks crappy, and it's been cut. It's obviously from something else, so I can definitely make it look a lot neater by doing that. So with all that said, really it's just a matter of getting this stuff cleaned up and rewiring it and putting it all back together after I get the case refinished. So after giving it some thought, what I've decided to do is not to make any repairs to this cabinet. This is a repair. This is a legitimate type of repair, and for me to mess with it would probably just make it worse than if I just left it alone. So I'm going to leave it alone. But I do want to sand down this old finish and do some staining to try and even out the stain a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and refinish it. It was actually done in lacquer. I tested the surface, and it is a lacquer coating on it, so I'm going to go ahead and use lacquer to put the final finish on it. So this should be pretty easy. I'm just going to do a real quick refresh on the cabinet, and then we'll move on to the electronics. What I want to do right now is go ahead and populate the front panel, which I did a little bit of pre-work. I did drill a couple of holes to accommodate the components, and I also went ahead and widened a couple other ones to accommodate the hardware, and then I went ahead and picked up some hardware. That hardware is one of the hardest things to get a hold of sometimes in these old radios, and getting the right hardware is important. And I also went ahead and did some little measurements to make sure that everything would be compatible with what we're trying to do. What we're going to do is we're going to replace this coil here with this right here. This has the inner coil, which is this one right here, and then it has the two outer coils. And then I need the 4-tapped coil here, which is this little spiderweb coil. And we're going to go to a variable condenser, which is this one. Tube socket's not going to go on the front panel, so I'm not going to worry about that right at the moment. I do need this resistor right here. It's 7 ohms. Got that right there. And we need all our little terminals right here, the telephone, speaker, antenna, and ground. So I've got those right here. And of course our dials. And then we have the one capacitor right there, which is this one here. And this is a little shield that's going to go in front of the capacitor. Let's go ahead and start populating this thing. Care of cinch terminals. Okay. Okay, a couple things I'm going to have to do, because I got a coil that's got to go here. That's got to go down there. That's in the way. So I do have to desolder that and that. Ooh. Using these nuts as spacers, which they work very well. Okay. Yep. Good. Perfect. this. Go like that. So that populates the panel. Okay, so okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and solder up the selector to this coil. So what I did is I took some Cat 6 wire, and I'm also going to cover it with heat shrink to make it look all white. So let's go ahead and get this started. Hope you can see it. Okay. So, okay, so I went ahead and took some of these wires. As you remember, I pulled all this wiring off of the old radio, and I went ahead and trimmed it to size and tinned the wires and kind of got it prepped for assembly here. So I'm going to go ahead and solder these on. These are just the ones that are staying on the plate. So this is my ground wire. This is going to go from here to this plate. It's also going to go to this coil. It's going to go to the A minus. So I got 3 connections here that I got to get soldered in here. I'm actually going to have to use another soldering iron. Okay, there we go. here's all my connections that I've made. I've got all 4 of these taps going to the appropriate tap. I've got the wiper of the tap here going to ground, which is here, and follows here to the ground lug. The other side of that goes to over here. It's coming to this side of the variable resistor. So I've got that connection made. I've got this ground, follow this ground. I've got this capacitor here. Other side of the capacitor is coming up, hitting the top of the tickler. Okay, the bottom of the tickler is going to wind up going to the plate. So, let's see, what else do I have? Okay, I have my 8 minus, which is tied to ground. That's going to tie to the back of the thing, and then I've got my antenna connection, which comes from here and hits this coil here. Everything on the plate that I could possibly hook up has been hooked up. The only thing I could possibly do is pre-solder these wires here, but the only reason I'm not going to yet is because I don't know the length. So here are the remaining parts. What I'm going to have to do, I've got to get these in here in a way that it won't interfere with the front plate. It's going to be a tight fit. But basically that's going to be the layout. This is going to attach to one of the tube sockets, probably like that. And then so I should have enough room there. I went ahead and did a little wiring layout so I know how to put everything together. Now these little brackets here, I went ahead and fabricated out of aluminum strips. They're fairly easy to do. That's what most home builders would have done. So we're going to go ahead and get all this stuff mounted. What I need to do first is mark the holes, and then I'll do a little bit of pre-drilling, and then we'll go ahead and screw the screws in. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Okay, yeah. Alright, you may or may not be able to see those little dots, but there are some little dots there. Okay, there they are. So all those are mounted. Now the next step is going to be, so what I'm going to be doing is pre-assembling these little wiring things here. I need to go from filament to filament to filament and back this way, so I'm going to go ahead and put solder lugs on those so that I can screw them into the appropriate places. That's that wiring harness. That. And I've got this. Oh yeah, nice and solid. Okay, so that's just going to go to the coil. Perfect. One. This wire. This wire. And that wire. So, the grids are hooked up. This wire. This wire. So that takes care of that one. Over to here. That one. That takes care of all the wiring in the case. I did forget one wire, and that was the one from the capacitor that comes back here to the coil. For now, we got another wire going on there, so. Alright. That takes care of wire that I don't have drawn here. Alright. There. A minus right there. Not going to connect it. Alright, this one is right here. That right there. There's my phone, or loudspeakers, bottom. And this is the telephone jack. And that is all my wires. Now I can slide this in here. Okay, so filament cable going to the rheostat. Okay. Alright, so that's all the connections to the varial coupler. Okay. Takes care of loudspeaker. Okay. Takes care of that connection. And the telephone jack. And the final connection is the A minus. This concludes the wiring. So I went ahead and found some tubes for it, and I also found a good grid leak resistor right here that I went ahead and popped in. So let's go ahead and fire this thing up and see how she sounds.
Visit PeachtreeServiceExperts.com or call 866 Experts. Peachtree Service Experts, the hometown Greater Atlanta area tune-up pros. See website for license.
Wow, this one was quite the restoration. It had a lot of complexities that I wasn't anticipating. But that's the way homebrews are. Homebrew radios can be quite complex, and they're sometimes very difficult to restore because there's not a lot of information to go on, and you don't know what the home builder actually had in mind when they built it. Unfortunately, a lot of home-built radios wind up in garages, attics, parts piles, and they don't seem to get restored that often. That's unfortunate because they actually should be in people's collections because they are very much a part of radio history. Well, this concludes yet another episode of Antique Radio Archaeology. If you liked what you saw today, please hit the like button. If you'd like to see more content like this, please hit subscribe. In the meantime, happy restorations, everybody. Hope to see you next video. Goodbye.